Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I'm officially starting my series review of Sons of Anarchy, and the way we will start that, of course, is by season number 1. This is the DVD that I got back in 2009 or whenever the series started releasing them, and been a diehard ever since. So it's just hands down my favorite show, and I figured, I love talking about it, so I'll just talk about it on my channel that I review movies on, so why not? So, a lot to unpack. I'm going to go episode by episode. And anyway, here we are. So, episode 1 is just the pilot. It's what it's titled. And so, basically, this is just an introduction of pretty much everything. We get introduced to Jax, Clay, Bobby, Tig, Trammell, Half-Sack, Chibs, Gemma, Wendy, Leroy, Piney, Juice, Opie, Tara, Darby, Donna, Harry and Ellie, Happy, Luann, and Alvarez. And what this starts off, the whole series starts off, Jax is on his chopper, going to a store, getting some smokes, things like that, and he sees a explosion out in the distance, and it's the Mayans. And so it was they go later the next day to the site of this explosion where they meet with Trammell, their cop that is on their payroll, and he of course kind of fills them in on everything. And then basically what happens, we also see that Darby, Ernest Darby, he is the leader of what they call the Nords, which is just a white supremacist skinhead gang. He's played by Mitch Pileggi, and he just kind of drives by and, of course, sees. And then they talk about how he was just released, and they're talking about the Nords roster these days. And the reason is that brought this all up is because Jax's ex-wife, soon-to-be ex-wife Wendy, is I think crank junkie, and she was shooting up and then goes into premature labor, which spins this whole thing. Jax and the guys go to the hospital where we really get the first, we see a little introduction with her in the car, but the real first introduction with Gemma, played by Katie Sagal, and then we also see the first introduction of Tara, played by Maggie Siff. And we see that there's history there with Jax and Tara. We don't know really. You could of course read between the lines, but we don't really know what officially. But she calls him Jax. He calls her Tara. They're very formal. And I understand this is a small town, and that's the thing we get from this: a very small town vibe. Yes, it's in California, but it is a very small town vibe. So, just your typical Mayberry. They joke about that a lot. They call it Mayberry, and so before all of that, one thing I want to talk about, I'm a little scatterbrained on this, so I'll hopefully be more focused later on. But one thing I want to talk about that Kurt Sutter did incredibly well. He is the showrunner, for those of you who don't know. He was helped on The Shield and has continued to do all kinds of other things. But he got incredible music for this show, and the first real sign of it, of course, is there's a song in the beginning, but the intro song, the actual theme music to the song, is called This Life, and it's by Curtis Stigger and the Forest Rangers, and they are the Sons of Anarchy house band, and they just go through all kinds of things, and just they do all kinds of things throughout the rest of the series. And of course, there's great people that just do it as well. And for those of you who don't know, Katie Sagal is actually an incredible singer. She sings the song Son of a Preacher Man in this one, and she'll continue to sing ones, and I'll point those out later. But basically, like I said, the Jax and Bobby and Chibs go to the Nords hangout, and he goes, and they have gotten through the grapevine who specifically sold Wendy the drugs, and Jax goes in and just beats him down with a pool cue. And then that's when we see Darby in his right hand as they show up there. And Darby's bar is called the Henry Dog, Harry dog, not the Henry dog. That's Opie's son, Henry. Speaking of Opie, let's talk about Opie. And he is officially in the group, in the club, but he just got released not long ago. He now works for a tree logging company that his wife Donna, played by Sprague Graydon, and Opie is he's played by Ryan Hurst. For those of you that know Sons of Anarchy, he is Alpha. Or I'm sorry, for those of you that know Walking Dead, he is Alpha. And for me, actually, what I knew him from originally was, and I talked about this in the review of the film, was Remember the Titans. He plays Gary Bertier. He's the young baby face, no beard. But he just got released, I think they say 6 months ago. And Donna is, of course, furious because she's been dealing with the kids by herself and everything, and as you see later, they're behind on bills, their mortgages due, they don't have a lot of money. And she thinks that Clay and Jax and the rest of the sons got rich, basically, while Opie sat in the cell for 5 years, I'm sorry. And which we'll find out later if that's the case or not. And speaking of Clay, I'm sorry I'm jumping around like this, but Clay is played by the great Ron Perlman. And Ron Perlman is an incredible actor. For those of you who don't know, he was on Beauty and the Beast with Linda Hamilton. I know that's where a lot of women are swooning over him on. And he's Hellboy, the original Hellboy. But Ron Perlman, not that the rest of the cast are bad at acting, because they're far from it. But Ron Perlman runs circles around the other actors. And I don't mean that disparagingly towards the others. It's just that Ron Perlman, when a lot of people see Ron Perlman, they think Hellboy. I think Clay Morrow. He's just that good in this. And he is the president of the Sons of Anarchy, and it's his way or the highway very much. And he is all on board with them dealing guns, which is what the Sons of Anarchy do. And we see Jax at the beginning of this episode. Well, anyway, he goes out to his to his mom's house for baby stuff and the storage and all that. And he runs across a manuscript that his dad had written about how the Sons of Anarchy needed to change, or it was going to end. So, of course, that's the dynamic we have here. Clay is 100% on board with the gun dealing to the gangs in the local areas, and Jax was seeming to be until this moment. Now he has hesitations. So, Jax later that night goes to his house, and his mother Gemma is there cleaning up, and this was after he visits Wendy, because he just goes to see how she's doing and all of that. And Wendy tells him, played by the great Drea De Matteo for those of you that know The Sopranos, she is, why am I blanking on her name? Oh my gosh. Anyway. But for those of you, a lot of people have compared this to The Sopranos, because it's like, oh, this is the best thing since The Sopranos, and some people even call it Hamlet on Harleys. And they're not wrong either way. I'm sorry, Drea De Matteo. I'm sorry, Drea De Matteo. I forgot your name for a second. But yes, she is Jax's ex. And so he goes to visit her, and of course tells her what happened, and she is mortified, and he basically says, you got to get clean, and blah, blah, blah. So Jax, she tells him that she's got some stuff at the house. They're going to press charges if she doesn't get it out. So he goes to the house, and we find Gemma cleaning. And so he's trying to get Gemma out of the house as he can find the stuff. But then they're talking, and Jax has basically succumbed to the fact that Abel's going to die. And Gemma, of course, hates that, smacks him in the face, and, says, you're the only one that he's got. If you don't like it, you might as well go kill him yourself. And then we learn a little history about John Teller, the Sons of Anarchy founder, and Jax's husband and Gemma's widow. And she is talking about how Tellers are strong. She says that she came through hell, landed on her feet. He had their first son died of Thomas. He died of the heart defect that Abel now has, and she says that Jax had it, but it just wasn't anything super serious. And we also learned that John Teller was hit by a semi, dragged 178 yards, and died. I'm sorry, lived for 2 more days. And so after all this, she does leave. He gets her to leave, and then Jax goes and he tells Gemma before she leaves that he did find a box of stuff in the storage, but he just says, it's just like Harley Mania, was just things like that. So later on, after Gemma leaves, Jax throws the stuff out, and then we see Gemma and Clay at their house, and he, of course, is telling she, of course, is telling him about the whole finding the manuscript and all of that kind of stuff. Well, not the manuscript, she doesn't know, but the finding of the different things, and she's worried because she doesn't want him to become John again. And we get a little hint that something happened there because she said she can't do it again. And he says, don't worry, he's not his old man. And we also know that Clay is talking about the damp in his hands. And one of the rules of the Sons of Anarchy that we will find out later, and I'm sure this is like real legitimate motorcycle clubs, is that if you can't ride, you can't leave. So that is one of the things that we will see later. And then the next day, the Sons of Anarchy meet up with Darby, who is the one, the aforementioned Nazi prick. And they tell him, you're allowed to cook and clean wherever you want, just not in Charming. And he basically is saying, like, well, there's other people that want in besides me. And he's like, okay, fine. Well, the next time the devil crosses the border, I'm coming after you. And so that's basically just kind of a little introduction there with Darby, officially meeting this with the Sons of Anarchy on screen. Gemma goes to the hospital later with Luann, her friend, and Tara tries to get Gemma to maybe go talk to Wendy about just, feeling better and that kind of thing. And Gemma, of course, is not having any of it. And as Tara walks away, she lifts up her shirt and we see that she has a tramp stamp. And she says, I leave that there so that I remember that shit's behind me. And so obviously we see more of the connection there that she was probably in deep with Jax. And I'm sorry. The next scene we see Opie, they need people to go blow up stuff. And Opie is the guy, they say he's the best. Nobody blows up stuff better than him. And so he is loading stuff in. Donna comes out and says, what's in the bag? I thought that we were done with this. They have a fight in front of the kids. Jax ends up coming up and he understands the situation very well. And he says, look, man, just go fix your family. I'll do this and everything. And so the reason that Bobby can't do this, Bobby Elvis, played by the great Mark Boone Jr., he has a gig in Tahoe, as they say, and what he does, he's an Elvis impersonator, and he goes to this club, and the guy, he says that his secretary double booked, and so, they have this Asian Elvis, and he's got a bunch of Korean people coming in, and so they're like, well, what the hell? Anyway, Half Sack, played by Johnny Lewis, comes in with him, with Bobby, and he basically busts it. Now, there was this thing that I did not understand. I've seen the show a million times. There's this thing I did not understand until after I watched the, I think it was 2002 or 2021, the Elvis movie with Austin Butler. I'm sorry, Baz Luhrmann's. So, of course, we see that Tom Hanks plays the Colonel who basically ran Elvis's life. So, in this scene, Half Sack goes back there and knocks on the door, and the Elvis guy goes, who is it? And he goes, it's the Colonel. And I was like, I didn't get that till this year because I had never seen Elvis, and I didn't really know much of the backstory with Elvis. I just thought that was so awesome. So the surgery for Abel goes well, and then we also see kind of at the same time the SOA blowing up the Mayan warehouse. And what happens is the Mayans end up coming up because Jax doesn't know everything about the explosives, so he has to call Opie or text Opie and then ends up getting them back behind. But then Clay says he came to send a message. He kills all of the Mayans that are there. Well, and there's one Nord, and he tells Jax to finish one of the Mayans, and Jax, you see him, getting the gun ready, but then he dies on his own. But clearly Jax wasn't going to do it anyway. So we see a little bit of I guess, sympathy there. We see the difference between Jax. So as they're loading this thing up and getting ready for it to explode, you see a silhouette of all these people running. And the interesting thing about this specific scene is that it was from the original like unaired pilot, I think, that they had filmed just kind of to show FX the thing. And Marcus Alvarez, who actually is the leader of the Mayans, the rival MC, is running. We see him there, and that's a little fun fact I saw. So he was actually originally in the Sons of Anarchy, and it was just a really cool fun fact that I saw, and it was just cool. But yes, Abel survives the surgery. Jax goes to see her. Him and Tara embrace. He gets the blood on her. She says, "Go clean yourself up." And then we start the music that coincides the Bobby Elvis singing at the Asian Club and with the just music in general. And they chose to pick a great song, Elvis Presley's "Can't Help Falling in Love with You." And so as we see this, we see Bobby singing in the Asian place. We see Tara going to look over the babies. We see Jax wiping off the blood and just kind of looking at himself. And it ends. All of this ends as Jax goes in to look at Abel. He has a tear in his eye. Gemma comes behind him and says, he's perfect. And then we see last second Clay just looking onward. So that's the end of season 1, episode 1, the pilot of Sons of Anarchy. Now, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do. I think I said this earlier in the video, what I'm going to do as far as, am I going to tally all the deaths? Am I going to, I don't know yet. I really don't know yet. All I know so far is I'm just covering the show. But with that being said, I've seen this series, the whole series, 3 times, I think. I've seen this specific season probably 8 times. Not even kidding. So I could quote this to you. And how I feel about this pilot is I love it. I think it's a great introduction to all the characters. I think it's the music. We see it's a great set for the tone of the whole series. It's gritty, it's dirty, there's some good values in it. We see that there's great music, there's great performances, there's all kinds of good things. I think it's a good introduction to the show nonetheless. So, I'm going to continue reviewing the series. As I said, I don't know how often. I'm going to try to do at least 2 episodes a week. But yeah, so that was episode 1, and I will be back with episode 2 as soon as I can. And until then, check out my other videos and things like that, and take it easy.